Hello, welcome to a video lecture that I've prepared for you with my comments and concerns about your rough drafts of the online review assignment, and wanted to thank you all for posting your rough drafts this past weekend and past couple of days, so I was able to comment on them. So let me move along and talk about a few things here, and then I want to look at your drafts, and then I want to come back and talk about a few more things. And then I'll set us up for a intermediate draft workshop, and then we'll work toward a final draft after that. Okay, so one of the first things I wanted to draw your attention to is the characteristic features of reviews. This is straight out of our text. So relevant information about the subject and criteria, I'm supposed to say for the evaluation, sorry about that. And so we need to think about what are our criteria and how we're going to represent them in the essay. A well-supported evaluation. So basically, we need to think about supporting evidence that will back up our use of these criteria. And so what I encourage people to do is, in the body of the essay, the evaluation and analysis section, that basically, if you can work your criteria into each topic sentence for your body paragraphs, so let's say you're doing a restaurant review, and then you want to say, one of the things I like best about this restaurant is the quality of service. And so with that type of a topic sentence, we have indicated our criterion is singular, very clearly in that statement. One of the things I like best about this restaurant is the quality of service. We've clearly identified the criterion that's being used there. And then throughout the rest of the body paragraph, we want to talk about the quality of the service at the restaurant. So, so your criteria should be kind of your guiding force throughout the body of the essay, and then backing it up with supporting evidence, hard, factual data that you can back that up with. So things that you experienced and etc. So, so this is one of the areas that I noticed a lot of concern about your rough drafts. And so let me come back to that. Attention to the audience's needs and expectations. So we need to understand who our audience is and how much they know about the topic, how much we need to fill in. So we're not just writing, I know that on a certain level you're writing for me as your instructor and I hold the grade book and such, but in terms of identifying an online review site, we need to think about the type of people who would come to that review site and what they know about the topic already and what you need to explain to them. So we can't assume just a general audience. We have to assume an interested audience, and oftentimes an informed audience. People who check out reviews usually know something about the topic of the review, and they're just trying to see what other people think about it. So think about who your audience is in terms of the online review site that you're targeting for this, and what their needs and expectations are. An authoritative tone, basically, we don't mean a heavy-handed authoritative tone, but that you have done your homework. So that you have, if you're doing a movie review, you've watched that movie 2 or 3 times on DVD, to get it all, to have sufficient experience with it to have this authoritative tone and make this evaluation. Or a restaurant review, you've gone to that restaurant 2 or 3 or 4 times so that you've been able to kind of gauge whether the first time you went was an exceptionally good time or an exceptionally bad day for them. And so by seeing a restaurant over several different visits, different times a day and stuff, we can kind of ameliorate those aberrations that are, very good days, very bad days, and kind of get a good, consistent impression of, in this case, a restaurant that we're reviewing. So We want to be able to relate to the reader that we know what we're talking about. We've experienced this. So awareness of the ethics of reviewing, and my main concern in that regard is don't fall into PR or advertising language. Sometimes people get overly praiseworthy in their evaluation, and it's almost off-putting to the reader. It sounds like they must have gotten paid to write this review. So be even-handed, fair-minded in your evaluation, and there are some ethics to take into consideration. Okay, moving along. This particular slide you should have seen before. I mentioned it in the very first video lecture about the online review assignment, and maybe it's a bit confusing because maybe there's too much text on the left of this slide, and kind of hard to relate to what's on the right or something. I tried to make it clear, but let me break it down a little bit. So just looking at the right-hand side of the screen, you're going to have an introduction where you kind of introduce your topic. Let's say it's Mexican food, and then you transition into Mexican restaurant, or particular type of movie, so comedy or romance, and then transition into the particular movie that you're talking about. So we do have kind of this funneling down quality to it. And we do have a working thesis of sorts in this introduction. So the working thesis might be, for a new take on Mexican food, be sure to check out Julio's Mexican restaurant in Westchester. So I don't think there is a Julio's Mexican restaurant, but that works as a thesis without really giving away the entire evaluation. We get the sense that it's overall positive, but we're going to read on and find out more. So the paragraph right after the introduction, I call it a background or a bridge paragraph. In classical rhetoric, this is actually called narratio. And so the intro is called exordium. So it gets the reader interested, gets them involved. And then narratio, this background or bridge, we're kind of taking a step back after the introduction and making sure that everyone's on the same page. So for a book review or a movie review, this is where we're going to put in the plot summary. For a restaurant review, this is where we're going to put in a description of the restaurant. We have to keep it compartmentalized to about one paragraph. Basically, by the, if you're double spacing this at this point, by the time you get to the top of the second page, we need to be applying your criteria. We need to start into that evaluation and analysis section. So what I'm seeing in most of the drafts that were submitted, that they tend to be movie reviews or something, that the plot summary has taken over. It has gone on for 3 or 4 pages. And sometimes I'm not even sure that there is an evaluation going on, and then it just kind of wraps up. So this is one of the dangers of this particular assignment, is that, I mentioned that you have to kind of control what you're doing in different parts of your essay. And what happens is people get into that plot summary and it takes over, and you have to reel it in. You have to control it, keep it on that first page, and get to your evaluation and analysis by the top of the second page. So really important. If I had to grade the rough drafts at this point, I just give you credit for turning in your rough draft. If I had to grade them, I'd see a lot of C's going on at this point, because that summary, overview, synopsis of things has taken over the entire essay. So we need to reel that back in, keep it to a paragraph. And then what I'm saying with the paragraph after that, the reason I put parentheses around it, this is your criteria paragraph, but it's optional. So that's the reason for the parentheses. In a formal critique, we probably would have a statement of criteria right there. In order for this thing to be good, it needs to have X, Y, and Z, and A, B, and C. And then we would apply those criteria throughout. What happens most often in reviews, movie reviews, restaurant reviews, etc., is that the reviewer doesn't actually state the criteria in a separate section. And so, again, that's why I put it in parentheses. But the criteria become revealed throughout the body of the essay, which is the evaluation and analysis section. So that's got the bracket around it and the ... And basically, I'm saying use as many paragraphs as you need. And what I'm trying to encourage you to do is think of paragraphs as cohesive chunks of information, and think about that topic sentence as the controlling idea for that paragraph, the thing that gives that paragraph focus and cohesion and unity. And so this is where you want to mention your criteria one by one in the topic sentences of your body paragraph. So one of the best things I like about this restaurant is the quality of service. So I've clearly indicated my criterion for that paragraph in my topic sentence, and then I'm going to talk about the quality of service throughout that paragraph. So you will see once you start doing this that everything becomes, very cohesive, controlled, that paragraphs are cohesive chunks of information and not just this sprawling plot summary, which I've seen too much in many of these drafts. So use as many paragraphs as you need for the evaluation analysis section. Mention your criteria in the topic sentence for each paragraph, what you're talking about in that particular paragraph, and keep it all cohesive. And then after that evaluation analysis section, we oftentimes have recommendations for improvement. This was a great movie, but it would have been even better if ... And then you fill that in. So great restaurant, but my experience would have been even better if ... And you fill that in. So this is very typical of any type of evaluation. I think, as I mentioned in my introductory lecture, even a performance review on the job. They might say you did great during this review period, and they'll have things that they want you to work on for the next review period. And so those are kind of the recommendations for improvement. And then we have a conclusion that just wraps up the analysis. So what I want to do at this point, I have a few more slides here with some questions to consider, but I want to take a look at your drafts and talk about them, and then come back to my other slides and encourage you to, as you work on your intermediate draft, to apply many of these questions that I'm going to pose to you and come back to this presentation and just stop it at different points in the presentation so you can see these different slides and think about these questions and whether you're addressing them in your review. Okay, so let's take a look at your drafts. Okay, in this particular essay, the writer is writing about the movie Inglourious Basterds by Quentin Tarantino. And right away, I feel like we kind of go into a bit of a plot summary. And so we need to find a way to introduce this movie and keep it succinct and have a thesis statement here. So, and I'm not seeing a thesis statement. So then we get the opening scene from the movie. And so we're kind of setting this up that if this sentence says the opening scene, I'm getting the feeling that this whole paragraph is about the opening scene, and that that's kind of what the writer is announcing. And it's got me worried that we're going to go through this movie scene by scene, and it's not a criteria-based evaluation. So looking back at the beginning, let me just say one thing, that for movie titles, book titles, etc., make those, italicize those, and throughout, typically longer works are italicized, shorter works, like a scene in a movie or a chapter in a book or a song on an album, those will be put in quotation marks. So we have the opening scene, and then during World War II, many homes were turned into hideaways. So I'm feeling like we're still getting this plot summary. Bastards were an elite squad of soldiers. Bastards did exist. Shoshana made a return to the film under a new name, and many Jewish citizens threatened by Nazis And we're already down to the conclusion, and I haven't seen any real evaluation yet. It's been all summary at this point. So major work needs to be done here. We need to reel this essay back in, compartmentalize the summary to just one paragraph, and then let's move into the evaluation and analysis section, which I'm not seeing any of at this point. So then we also need to have our recommendations for improvement and our conclusion. So just in terms of the text, we've got a lot of work that needs to be done here. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Okay, in this particular essay, the writer is reviewing Bohemian Rhapsody, the new biopic about Freddie Mercury and Queen. And I think the writer is basically on the right track with this. With the introduction, I'd rather see a thesis than an announcement of what you're going to do in your essay. So we have this, for my review, I will be evaluating the biopic film based on, etc. Rather than announcing it, let's have a thesis statement instead. Okay, the idea of Bohemian Rhapsody, so this is background, and but then throughout the rest of the essay, I don't see topic sentences with criteria in them. So instead, we kind of connect with a source here, and we do have some recommendations for improvement here. Although there were some flaws with directing and acting, and so we go into that. So that's really good. And maybe that's the main thing, is that there are problems with it. I think we do get a statement of criteria here. Criterion, when it comes to accuracy, the movie is spot on in some areas, but a miss in others. So this is a good topic sentence. Indicates a criterion, and then this paragraph is about that. Couple of things that are not exactly accurate to reality. So again, kind of recommendations for improvement. The visual and sound effects of the movie are also hit and miss. So very clear indication of criterion, visual and sound effects. Emotional response from the viewers of this film were mixed. My personal emotional response. So I think very good topic sentences, controlling ideas. I think we need a little more evaluation, some of the work that's being done in this evaluation analysis section is very good at this point. And maybe back up a little bit on this section and try to make sure that this is something that you're doing consistently throughout this entire section. And then we get overall. So we have the conclusion. So again, to borrow this writer's word, overall, I think this essay is coming along quite well. Some things need to be improved about it that I mentioned already. Okay, so in this particular essay, the writer is writing about the stage play Rent, and it's based on the Italian opera La Bohème, and we need a thesis statement of some type at the end here, so of the introduction. And then the movie starts out, and when I see that, it just kind of concerns me a little bit that if this is how it starts out, then are we going to have another paragraph with plot, another paragraph with plot, another paragraph with plot? So we need to compartmentalize this plot summary to one paragraph. Instead, we do get, all of them live in a building owned by Benny. AIDS swept the nation in the early 80s and 90s. This movie hinted about transgender people coming into the conversation. Pivotal parts of the movie. So I'm just not seeing the plot summary compartmentalized into one paragraph, and I'm not seeing the criteria for evaluation clearly indicated in the topic sentences of the body paragraphs, and I'm not seeing the recommendations for improvement either. So again, considerable work needs to be done on this essay, and hopefully my lecture notes will guide you in that direction. Okay, let's take a look at another example. Okay, in this particular essay, the writer is writing about the film Catch Me If You Can. and similar problems in this essay. So I think we need something that works like a thesis at the end of this paragraph. We have the film starts with, and so right away I get a little concerned. It's like, uh-oh, are we going to have paragraph after paragraph of plot summary? And we kind of, in fact, do. I'm having a hard time finding the evaluative comments here. So again, we need to compartmentalize the summary to one paragraph, and the evaluation and analysis, this is a review. That should make up the bulk of the essay. That's what the reader is reading it for, and that's what we need to deliver on. So we have the film starts with, and then we talk about parents end up having a divorce. Frank moves to Georgia. An officer, Carl Hanratty, tirelessly tries to catch Frank. So I'm just getting plot summary after plot summary throughout this essay. And then the movie ends with. So we need to compartmentalize basically everything after the introduction into one paragraph. And then we need to figure out what are the criteria for evaluation, and then apply them and back them up with evidence from the film, have those recommendations for improvement, and the conclusion. So again, considerable work needs to be done here. Okay, let's take a look at one more example. Okay, in this essay, the writer is writing about the video game Red Dead Redemption 2. Sorry about that. And basically doing a pretty good job, but I think also some tightening, some more cohesiveness would really help out this essay. So in terms of a thesis statement, we have Red Dead Redemption 2 is Rockstar's greatest achievement to date, largely due to the fact that it has the largest open world ever, so that seems to be an indication of a criterion, with endless things to do, places to explore, and people to meet. So we kind of have what's called a tricolon here with three things: endless things to do, places to explore, people to meet. And so we need to explore that in the body of the essay. So again, we also need to compartmentalize the summary to about a paragraph. So okay, and so we do get kind of a hint of criteria, but I'd like to see it made stronger. I see something about intricate details behind all things. So little details. So keep coming back to these intricate details throughout this paragraph. Keep reasserting that key term, that criterion. The world seemed to be prepared for almost any action, and so we need to continue to talk about that. Almost any action throughout this paragraph. Now we have, not only are the aesthetics pleasing, and I haven't really heard about the aesthetics yet, so if aesthetics is going to be one of the criteria, let's elaborate on that. Then we have the plot line could possibly win an Oscar. So this paragraph should be about the plot line, and we need to keep going with this. So we're right here at the end, and we need to keep going with the evaluation analysis. We need to have these recommendations for improvement, and we need a conclusion. So those are my comments on this draft. Let me go back to my slides. Okay, so there's a reminder about the typical format and structure of any type of review, analysis, evaluation, formal critique. Tends to be even more persistent with this structure the more formal you get in this type of a document. And let me move on to some questions that I want you all to consider. Okay, so these next two slides go together, and then I've got two more slides that go together. So what is the genre of the thing that you're reviewing? So it's not just a movie, but is it a Western? Is it a romantic comedy? Is it action? And so when we think of the genre of the thing that we're reviewing, then that leads us to the characteristics of that genre. So let's figure out what those characteristics are, And those characteristics are oftentimes your criteria for evaluation. So that's the next question. What are your criteria? The characteristics of the genre may provide some of the criteria for evaluation. What is your overall thesis? Sometimes your statement of thesis, like I said with the introduction, we kind of have a placeholder thesis statement there. And sometimes we actually say it's strongest in the conclusion in a review. Okay, some more related questions. What is your rating system? So look at the website that you're targeting for this online review, and what type of rating system do they use, and how do they present it? So we want to emulate that. Who is your audience? Again, we talked about that already, but back to the site that you're targeting for publication of this, and what do you know about the people who go to that site? So how much can you assume they already know about your topic? Maybe a little out of order. Where do you plan to publish your review? What are some of the features of their review site that you'll need to try to replicate in your final document? So I'm thinking multimodally here about, the banner, use of color, the formatting of the text, use of product images or other images, how they present their rating system, etc. And again, maybe slightly out of order here, what evidence do you have to back up your criteria? So as you mentioned those criteria, how are you going to support your claims, basically, about those criteria? So, okay. So let me, I think I had this in the worksheet that you guys did, but I also had some additional questions. So these are based on the characteristic features of a review essay. So that's what you're seeing underlined here. Relevant information about the subject. Is all the information that the writer includes relevant to the topic? What's not relevant? What's not included that should be included? Okay, criteria for evaluation. I think we've talked pretty well about that. A well-supported evaluation. So we're going to back up those criteria with supporting evidence. Attention to the audience's needs and expectations. So we kind of talked about that in the past couple of slides. And an authoritative tone. So is the writer talking down to the audience or over their heads? How could the tone be improved? The ethics of reviewing. I mentioned advertising or PR language. And then a couple of more questions I had for you. How is the document organized? Is it easy to follow with clear transitions? How well does the writer use multimodal features? So maybe we're talking about this for this next review. Everything I've seen up to this point has been just the written text. So now we're going to make it a multimodal text and make it look like like a website. I covered that in a previous lecture about how to do screen captures and insert these things into your Word document. And then when we get close to the end, we're going to save that Word document as a PDF. And then when we look at the PDF in a PDF viewer like Adobe Acrobat, it tends to set the document very wide from one edge of the window to the other. And so it kind of looks like a website at that point. And that's the effect that we're after. How could the use of multimodal features be improved? And then the last question, just thinking more in terms of the multimodal aspects of it. Study the intended publication site carefully for their multimodal features that could be included in the review. So those are my concerns about your rough drafts, and hopefully that's helpful. Let me set up an intermediate draft workshop. I'm also going to be introducing you to our final theory of writing prompt and the e-portfolio assignment that we have to do. So stay tuned for a video lecture about that. In the meanwhile, please work toward a revise your text in light of everything that I've said so far, and also it's time to start putting those multimodal aspects into your document. So let me try to set that up ask you guys to post your intermediate drafts by, let's say, Thursday of this week. Give you 48 hours to work on that, and then respond to each other's multimodal drafts by the end of the weekend. And then I think we can have a final draft workshop next week. And also, I'll be introducing, like I said, the theory of writing final prompt and the ePortfolio. And we've got until the end of finals week to get that together, but I want to lay it all out for you in enough time that possibly by the end of next week, by the end of classes, you might be done with everything with this class. So I will post some information about wrapping up the semester as well. So that's all I've got to say at this point. Good luck revising your drafts and inserting those multimodal aspects into your essay. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me, and we can also set up a conference to talk about things. So thanks for listening, and I'll be talking to you soon.